Hello, listeners, and welcome to Making It Make Sense with Isaiah, Jasper, and Theo. Make sure you go hit that like button, subscribe, and rate us on Spotify, Anchor, and Apple Podcasts. We put out new episodes weekly, so you want to make sure you don't miss a single thing. And while you're there, you can also leave us a comment or two. Or, if you want to reach us more directly, you can DM us on our official Instagram at Making It Make Sense with IJT, or you can also email us at Making It Make Sense with IJT at gmail.com. Hi, this is Jasper. Welcome back to Making It Make Sense with Isaiah, Jasper, and Theo. Today we are going to try to make sense of dealing with loss and grief and getting through it. And now, here's my bro Isaiah to give his take on this topic today.
Oh wow. So so this is incredibly timely and obviously you guys will hear this like a little bit later than we're recording it as is normal. But so July 12th is my grandmother's birthday. And she passed away in October of 2012. So it's kind of two times a year that are just rough for our family. But we all deal with it very differently, obviously. But for me, I shut down a bit, which I think I've been very like aware and cognizant of that for a long time. If I feel like overwhelmed with emotion about something, I'll just kind of shut down. And when it first happened, you know, so full disclosure, so my grandmother was diagnosed with renal cell carcinoma. Apparently, it's a form of kidney cancer. And she had been sick, actually. Well, had different ailments, but things like that. But um, she'd actually been sick for 5 years. And well, at least I'm going to speak for the set of the grandchildren. At least we had no idea,
Oh,
and like she didn't tell us about that. So if she, any doctor's appointments that she had gone to and stuff like that, we didn't know. But um, which I think sometimes is like characteristic of not. I don't want to make a generalization or sweeping generalization, but I think a lot of many Southern women are very dignified in that sense. They don't want to. They don't want to feel like a burden. They'd like to, if they know that something is coming, they like to, you know, just embrace it with class and. They don't want to feel. And my grandmother was very much like that. She never wanted to feel like a burden on anyone.
there's a generation, I think, of people who are
Yes.
like that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's why, and thank you for that, because I didn't want to make like a generalization that was completely incorrect, you're right. I feel like there's a generation of people that are like that,
Oh, yes.
right. And so my grandmother was, I always feel like she was the only person in the world that like really got me, like she really just like she just we would just give each other looks and she just like understood me, you know and so like losing her just felt like, okay, like nobody else on this planet, like not as a mom, I love you. So this is not to say like, listen, you spend time inside that womb, like you are connected for life, but it's just, like there's just a special bond that you have with your grandma, right? And and I was like, and also love my cousins, this is not a knock or anything, but just like, as the because I was the not in birth order, meaning that that's makes you more significant or anything like that at all. But just like, I think because I was the eldest grandchild, like I got like a lot of time with her.
Just say it, Isaiah. You're the
From
best.
from my, no, because a couple of mine, I love my cousins. They're listening, gonna be listening. But like, like I just felt, and I'm sure like they felt like those different levels of bonds with her too, because her name was Georgia, and Georgia was Georgia. That's the song I danced with my mom to at my wedding. I danced to Georgia on My Mind, and
Oh,
like,
shut
yeah,
up.
Beautiful.
yeah, and
Wow.
it was just a lot. So just to, because I don't want to take too much time on my grief. I want to make sure we all got grief to talk about, but because it's unfortunately it's a really crappy part of life.
Yeah, it's a crappy part of being a human being.
Of being a human, exactly. And I spent a lot of time with my grandmother also because both of my parents they're both retired military now, but both of my parents were active duty, and I think the general consensus was they didn't want me to be a total military brat, and that feeling of like displacement. And I think that's something that they collectively, along with my grandmother, like decided that, okay, like, so if we are going to be moving around and being stationed different places, then he needs like a true north home base, right? So so I spent a lot of time with my grandmother while my parents were overseas or deployed or things like that. And not to say like let me tell you something. My mother wrote it every which way before we had the technology we had now. Every which way she could contact me, whether it was on the phone or her sending me postcards or letters. I'm talking about like multiple times a week. I would just have them flowing in. I still have like a bunch of them. But anyway, I digress. So
yay, Mom.
yeah. So but my grandmother became she was also a mother figure, and not even just in that like grandma way, like the fun grandma way, like she was like also mom, right? And so I shared so much with her and vice versa. And so when we found that out, and there was a 6-month period between when we found out and when we lost her. So there wasn't that much time to process because it was already stage 4 when we knew, once we knew. So the thing also about renal cell carcinoma, just to give, and I only know one other person in my life who has a relative or family member that has passed from renal cell carcinoma. And so we relate a lot on that level also. But so it's renal cell carcinoma is environmental. It's not biological. And so, which that I can go into another time. But and it was occupational based is how that happened with her. But finding that out, I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it. Like, it sent me into like a tailspin. I was binge drinking and going out a lot, and I think we all know I love my wine, but like it was a little intense there for a minute. And so even like going to the hospital, was just it was just hard for me. And so without taking up too much time on all the details completely, but so the grieving process, so it was, I remember saying goodbye to her in her hospital bed. And one of the things I do wish I had done is I wish I had stayed for like this deep, I guess, but I wish I had stayed for the last breath. I didn't have I didn't have the emotional capacity to do that at the time. I was 26, I believe, at the time, right? Like 26. And I couldn't process it properly, or I don't know what is properly and what isn't with grief. I'm going to be totally honest about that. I don't know. I don't think anyone really knows the answer. And I also do subscribe to the idea that there's not like a right way to grieve, right? Like I don't, like, I would never tell anybody like, you shouldn't grieve this way, because there isn't a right way or a wrong way or whatever. But I just couldn't be there for like the last moment. So my mom called me a few hours after, and she told me she was gone. And I just went into this like I guess it was like a state of shock. Like I just couldn't, like I didn't know left from right. I was just like, okay, like, and so a lot of the emotions of everything came out after. So there was the funeral, of course, or the wake and the funeral and all of that stuff. And, and I think like for me, like I just remember like a lot of people saying, I'm sorry, and a lot of people hugging you, and not to take away from anything any of those people did for me or the way they were there for me. But it was just very, I felt like I didn't feel like I could feel like a lot of things, like emotionally. Like I was just kind of like, it was like very, I don't know the word. Like
Was there like a blur? It sounds like.
it was like a blur. Yeah. It was just like a blur, but it was also like, I just could not, like, impenetrable, like nothing set in like from anyone. It was just like later, of course, I'm like, thank God these people were around me, but I couldn't, it was a blur. Like like there's some parts of it, like I don't even remember certain interactions. And so
Grief.
it just kind of turned into, I was like, okay, well, what can I do to not feel this? What can I drink
Uh-oh.
that will not let me feel anything about this right now? Because the moment I have to settle with and sit with this and let this sit with me, like, I don't think I'm going to be fine. So I have to just distract myself in every way, shape, or form. To which point, actually, I met my husband that April following that. So she passed away in October of 2012. I met my husband in April of 2013. So because I still was kind of cognizant enough to know that if I'm sitting in this space right now, I'm no good to anybody, right? But like at the same time, it was just kind of like, all right, well, I kind of think I really like this person. So there was
Uh-oh.
that. But
Here comes husband saving the day.
oh God, yeah. And when I say, and everybody's story is different. Something or someone, I don't want to say saves you from the grief, because not to be like morbid or negative, but no one can really save you from that. Like you have to just go through it and move through it. Like there's no saving you from it. There's being supportive and being there, and I will say, like, the people that were supportive and then were still there after I came out of that space, or not rather come out of, but after I was able to see a little bit more clearly through all of it, those were the real ones. Like they stuck it out, like while I'm spiraling, and they were still there. But it really is true when they say like it never leaves, but it hurts a little bit less. And when I say a little bit, like it's over a number of years. Every detail is very vivid still, but like as far as that goes, but everything after that is blurry, and then things start coming back to you, and you start feeling things maybe a few years later. And, or even something subtle, like I actually, so this was something that just made me feel better. And, and then obviously you guys tell me what kind of gave you comfort at least. Um, my grandmother was wearing a pink t-shirt that I had gotten her when she was in the hospital when she passed away.
Oh,
And there was a cross I had purchased for her, like that, like one of those little like knickknack crosses though that you put on like on your, with your tchotchkes and like your china cabinet or something like that. And it said it was a scripture from the book of Isaiah in the Bible, and some, I think, like two other items that I ended up keeping that were hers just because I knew she loved them. And she just, it smelled like her. And I also put this like praying oil that she had in there. So I put it all in a Ziploc bag. So I had enough cognizance to do that. At least I put it in a Ziploc bag and I sealed it shut so that it would always smell like that. So it would
oh,
always smell like her. So even now, when I open that bag and I keep it in one of the drawers in my nightstand by my bed. So even every now and then I'll like open the bag and it smells just like her,
oh, wow.
and it makes me feel like, she's still here. Um, and then the last thing, because I y'all know me, I just be talk talk. um, but the last thing is, I didn't dream about my grandmother for a very long time after she passed away, and I always liken it to like the universe telling you you're not ready to see that yet, because then you're not gonna move toward any kind of healing because it's gonna be kept alive for you completely. So I didn't dream about my grandmother until the night before my wedding. My grandmother came to me in a dream where it was, and the funny thing is, on the wedding day, this part happened just like this. It's just what I didn't see her obviously, but in the physical. So uh she happened to be in the room in my dream the whole time. In a dream, nothing looks the same way that it looks in real life, right? Like it just looks different. So I'm in this room, and I guess this was the room me and my wedding party were supposed to be getting ready in or whatever. And we did all get ready in like a space together at the venue. And my mom and my mother-in-law in the dream came in, and they looked beautiful in their dresses, and I was telling them how beautiful they looked, and I hadn't finished my tie yet. Now normally I should have noticed this, but in the dream, like my mom or my mother-in-law normally would have gone and let me adjust your tie, and like the mom thing, like let me fix that for you, or let me tie it. And they didn't do it in the dream, so that was off. So I should have realized it was a dream when I was dreaming it, but whatever. So that didn't compute. And so they, were chatting, and they leave the room, and then my grandmother just steps forward, like she was just in the room the whole time. And I didn't react in the dream, but I just looked at her like, when you look at someone like you're trying to memorize like every part of their face, like you just want to remember everything about them. And so I'm just like looking at her, and she just starts tying my tie and telling me how handsome I look, and I'm so proud of you, and all of the things that I would be able to hear her say, like, or that I imagine myself hearing her say, like in her exact tone of voice. Because like, I don't know about but for me, like I can still like hear her. Like if I try to think of what she sounds like, I can still hear it like clearly. um and like, and there's things that like happen too where you feel like they're still, I don't know, like they're just around you. Like I was on the phone with my mom a few years ago, and my mom and I do this thing where I kneel down and she kneels down like over our bed. Like she'll like kneel over, like if we're not in the same room obviously or whatever, but I'll like be on my knees and like leaning over my bed with my elbows on the top of the bed, and I'll just be talking. And that's like a thing, like my grandmother used to do that, she does that, and I do that. I don't know, it's like a thing. And
Oh.
And so I'm looking out the window, and my mom was looking out her window too, which I didn't know until after this happened. And and I'm looking directly at the window, so there's no way that I would have missed if something or a person or something were standing there. And I go to I go to look out there, and I hear a tapping on the window, like a fingernail is tapping on the window. And my mom hears the same thing at the same time. And I went, did you hear? There's like a tapping on it. And she goes, there's a tapping on my window. Did you wait a minute? And she goes, oh, Georgia. And like, we just like, when I tell you, like, even now, like, I'm like, it was just the craziest thing. And because my grandmother she would take her down, she'd like tap you on the shoulder and be like, like, just to like get your attention, like, hello. And anyway, that's my grief. But yeah. Sorry, I know I told mouthful as usual. But Jasper or Theo, Jasper, if you wanted to go next and tell us about your grief and your story.
Well, Isaiah, I want to tell you that your story is a beautiful one. And I empathize with you because losing a loved one like your grandmother, that is something that is unimaginable to lose someone that watches you grow and watches you from a baby to become a man. And so, I
Yeah.
empathize with you, and my prayers are with you because you're still dealing with this to this day. And that's something that is you have to just go through time. You just have to just keep living. You know,
Yeah.
So, on to my story. Well, you guys don't know this, but um, 4 years ago, 4 years ago, which would be August the 13th, I lost my brother. He was murdered,
Oh my god.
and uh, he was murdered Sunday. Sunday, it was a Sunday, early Monday morning. So like late Sunday night, early Monday morning. And he was found by the city workers. They do like the grounds in the city in the mornings. One of them found him, and he was found near my mother's house. Not even a feet, like literally, like where they were. We had like the buses that travel. There's like a bus company that's right behind where my mother lives, and so he was found like right there near. And so yeah, he was murdered. He was shot and dumped there. So he has a child, and when I found out that he was gone, the day I never forget the day we found out that Monday. Before we knew it was him, it was a lot of police was in it. It came in the area and was traffic heavy, and so we knew it was police, and we seen police coming and looking around the area, and I would never forget the investigator came to our door, knocked on the door of my mom's house, had black on, and he came in. I just knew it was something wrong because my mom, it was already feeling like something was wrong because she had called his phone, and I called his phone because my brother would go out and he would stay at his friends' homes, and sometimes he would oversleep and not answer his phone until he wakes up.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes he would sleep through the day and may sleep until 1, 2, or 3 in the afternoon. So
Mm-hmm.
my mom was calling and she was just trying not to panic, but she knew something was off. But I was trying to be positive, like, oh, my brother, he's fine. He's gonna call. He just overslept because he does it all the time. But my mom, she just knew that as a child, she knew something was not right. And
Mm-hmm.
um, like I said, when the investigator came, and delivered the news, it was like I can't describe it, but it was like an alibi experience I had. Like I immediately like started to cry. Like it was like, and it was like a quick cry. Like I cried, grabbed my mother cried, and then I snapped out of it because I was like, I was talking to my mom, I can't break down, and so I snapped out of it, and I kind of became numb because I was like, okay, this is a dream. I hadn't processed it because I just was told my brother was dead and that he was, and that he was murdered. It was not like, he was sick or, died from being sick or something like, someone decided to take his life and then dump his body like he was trash, and that really was gut punching for me because I was like, wow, like who would do that? Like, how could someone just dump somebody like they're nuts, like they don't have family that loves them? And then I thought about my niece's daughter, like she loves her father and all she knows is him. And I'm like, how am I gonna have to now tell her and how look at her and knowing that her dad is gone and dad's not coming home. So that was, for me dealing with that and trying to process it, and also being it for my mother because that was her firstborn. That was my only brother. I don't have any other siblings. Like, that's the only brother I have. He's my oldest brother. So me dealing with that, I'm like, like what am I? Like my mind was just racing. I'm like, this has got to be a dream. Like I know this is not real. He's going, it's not real in my head. So, it took me it took me going to his funeral when I went to his funeral and seeing him in the casket for me to realize like he was gone.
Mm.
Um, because it's like my mind. I'm like like oh my mind kept saying to myself he's out of town. Like I told the authority like your dad's out of town. He's coming home. So my mind placed it in my head it's the same like okay to myself. Oh he's out of town. He's coming home.
Yeah.
Cause he did shows. So I'm like he's going to a show. He's gonna come home soon. But seeing him there, and I remember like I was in the dorm at school, and I was walking to the dorm room, and I was saying to myself that I have to get ready to say goodbye to my brother, and I couldn't even utter the words goodbye. Like it was like me saying the good. When I said good, like I literally like had a mini breakdown in the moment of saying the word good. So I'm like I had to tell my brother, or look at him and say to him and to myself that he's gone forever. And so like they were just dealing with that, just coming to terms knowing that he was not gonna be on this earth. When me and my brother we didn't have the stereotypical what you call brother relationship. Like we didn't hang out. We didn't go to, you know, clubs, or we didn't do things that brothers stereotypically you would think that brothers would do. We didn't hang around the same crowds of people. So like our relationship, we were close because we grew up together. It was he had other siblings outside of me, but he was closest to me because we were raised together. And so we didn't have that. Like I said, we didn't have that type of relationship. We hung out or anything or went out with each other to places. We just to have their relationship. But he knew I loved him, and I know he loved me, and he was a great big brother. He's very protective of me, and you know, um, with him passing, like I told my mom, I remember the day I had came home from school, and that day I kept trying to keep it together. And this particular day, I was at school trying to do work in the library, and I couldn't concentrate. Like I couldn't. That whole day, my head was hurting really bad. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't think. I couldn't focus. So I was trying to do work, and I just left the library and came to my mom's house. And so my mom was like, she had been telling me like days prior, like you need to let it, you need to release it, cry, let it out. And because I didn't cry at his funeral because I couldn't be emotional because I didn't. I'm the type of person like I just feel I'm not a emotional person, so it's not easy for me to let my guard down and be emotional. So I was being strong at the funeral and keeping my guard up. So on this particular day, like I said, my mom was like, you need to just release it and cry. So on this particular day, I got to my mom's house and I was talking to her and telling her what was going through my head, and I had a breakdown, like a full on meltdown, screaming, the whole fist. Like I let it out. Like I was a ball. Like I just couldn't believe my brother was gone. I was hurt. Like my feelings were hurt, and I was devastated. I was like shattered into a million pieces, and I feel like a piece of my heart was taken when he was taken from me because that's all I have besides my mother in our close family is my brother. So a piece of me is gone. So I think for me now, I know that it affected me because we're dealing with people because I'm naturally guarded. I've been guarded person, but now I feel like I have a defense mechanism where I have to always be like this tough combative person because I feel like I have to protect myself because I feel like if I'm vulnerable and I show that I'm weak, that somebody will hurt me like I hurt my brother because I feel like my brother, was he was the type of person that he would give the shirt off his back. He helped anybody, and I felt like him being as vulnerable like that, he was taken advantage of, and someone hurt him. So I just felt like I have to keep myself strong. Um, and the grieving process for me, um, I have a great friend who calls me throughout the whole um, ordeal, who talks to me almost every day, and my cousin and my aunt who I talk to almost every day. You know, they call and check on me, even when I didn't want to talk, because at one point I shut off my social media in my phone. I wasn't talking to anyone for weeks, and so them were the only people that I talked to, and them calling and checking on me and just listening to me and letting me vent is what helped me, kind of move through it. And I had some of the worst nightmares. I had some of the hardest times those first couple of months. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I was like, it was just hard for me to function. I had developed anxiety, and I had the type of anxiety that was internal, where I would feel my heart would beat fast. I would get triggered by things, loud noises, not being at home about my mother. Like I would just the anxiety would get to me really bad. That's how bad it was for me. And so I go to the church, so my church family really was that support system for me as well because of their prayers and sending me cards and my pastor sending me different pamphlets on grief, on how to deal with grief, on the stages that you're going to be going through, like help me understand process of it and me dealing with it. And, it's been a process 4 years now going to, and it's been a process of just, for me, of just, understanding that, it happened and that I can't change it or undo it and that I have to be here and be here for his daughter and just live because he want me to live. And I had to realize like he want me to continue living my life and doing what's best for me and not stopping my life because I wanted to stop living. I wanted to just curb it all and go hide and never come out to the world. But I knew that I could come to the understanding I knew that my brother wouldn't want me to just stop living. And so, that helped me, get through it. In 4 years now, I'm doing better because I'm able to talk about it because at one point I couldn't talk about him. I wouldn't look at his pictures. I wouldn't even say his name. Now I can say his name. I will talk about him and share my story and share his story and share how it affected me. And this is my story on my grief moment. Now on to my other bro, Theo.
Oh God, what can I say? Um, what's grief? Um, I don't think I really speak about grief. Well, my grief a lot. I don't speak about me a lot. I'm in the kind of business where you have to, the profession where you have to care and take care of others and worry about others' physical health and mental health. And well, there's two griefs that I'm dealing with loss or dealing with my grief or my loss, and I still up to today I have not gotten over it. Um, so one, the one that I'll gladly talk about, and which a lot of people don't know, is that my biological father passed away, and I still don't have the words or the understanding or the emotional maturity to accept it, and I don't think I want to. My father was, when I mean, like, he was like the bee's knees, for lack of a better word. My father he was such an amazing man. And I admired everything he did, everything he said, and I wanted to be exactly like him. My father was the kind of father that was like, he was like a very present father. he played a very active, like sometimes too active role. Like he was in my life too much. He was a very intimidating man, and but like he was like really hard to the world, but inside the house it was really warm and comforting, and he encouraged us and affirmed us. And so when I was 10 years old, my biological father passed away of AIDS. And my mother and my family, no one ever explained that to a 10-year-old. And no one felt the need to explain to a 10-year-old that this was what was happening. Like you, Jasper, and you, Isaiah, you guys had I think it was the appropriate way of going through things. You guys were able to see your loved one in a casket. I never got to see that happen. I never got to see my father in a casket. I never got to say goodbye to my father. My father was here today. And back in that time, AIDS was, it was AIDS. He had AIDS. My father was a gorgeous man. And I saw my father deteriorating throughout the months and the weeks and the days. And I would ask questions and people will tell me, mind your business, you're a child. Stay out of grown folks' business. And one day my father was really, really sick. Him and I were trying to do homework. And my father just threw up on top of the table. And my father was very like, get your education. So he threw up all over the table. He threw up on top of my homework, and some of the vomit got on top of me. Sorry for being so visual. And the family members came in, they took him and they left. And that was the last time I saw my father. And with no questions asked. And then 2 weeks later, family members came in and just told me, Theo, for my Spanish speaking family members, your father is dead. And no one at 10 years old, because at 10 years old, I thought I knew it all, but now as a grown man, I knew nothing. My family didn't take the time to explain grief to me, didn't take time to explain loss to me, didn't take time to share. No one took time to ask me how I'm doing. So for a very long time, Theo Fox, was angry because my idol was gone and everybody was acting as if everything was fine. And later on, being the nosy, inquisitive teenager that I became, I discovered that my father had AIDS. I discovered that my father got a blood transfusion years ago, and that's how he acquired the virus. And no one ever said anything to me. And I grew even more angry. And eventually I found a very good therapist that put some things in order for me. And I was able to move forward. And like you, Isaiah, you said earlier today that, you find it difficult on your grandma's birthday, to be motivated or to do things. My biological father passed away on my birthday, from my understanding, April 7. And I find it very difficult up to today, I'm 36 years old, to celebrate my birthday and be happy and be present and celebrate me, especially since he used to make a very big deal about my birthday. It was like super annoying. And even up to this day, I still have that burden and that heaviness and that sadness. And I miss my father every day. I think about my father every day. I I do not feel like you guys feel, as I mentioned, and in general, people feel a little bit more relief. Every I feel the same way I did when I was 10 years old. I feel the loss even more now as a 36-year-old man. And, I guess I speak to my therapist about it, and I guess it's something I carry with me for the rest of my life. And even my father passed away when he was 40 something years old. And I think about that age coming up for me, and I think of my mortality, and I think of my child, and I think about, the kind of impact that I want to have in her life and in the life of the people that I love. Because my father was that amazing that after all these years that he's passed away, I still have a vivid picture of how he looks, how he sounds, how he smiles, how he smells. Like, if you guys can smell me, I smell exactly like my father. My father used to wear Egyptian musk oil, and that's all I wear. And is a constant reminder. I don't know, I don't know if psychologically is doing me any good, but I don't want to forget my father. I don't want to forget the incredible human being that he was. And of course, he wasn't perfect, but to me, he was like, I idolized my father. And a lot of, I try to copy a lot of the things that he did and he says, and trust me, I'm failing. But this loss or this grief that I have is something that I deal with continuously, is something that I deal with every day. And I think a lot of it is, unfortunately, a lot of the adults in my life did not help me deal with the grief and the loss in an appropriate way. And I think I've come to terms with understanding that they too were dealing with their grief and their loss, and maybe they didn't have the necessary tools to teach me what I needed to be taught. Because I was also angry at the people around me that did not protect me in the way that I needed to be protected. So that's why right now, the kind of parent that I am, I'm very protective of my child and what she is and isn't exposed to. And I also do not downplay her intelligence. And I speak to her directly within her, where she is developmentally. Yeah, but I wish, hopefully one day I will find the comfort of dealing with my grief and with my loss, and hopefully getting through it, because I haven't gone through it. And I don't think in my subconscious, in my soul, or my spirit, I don't want to get through it. If that makes sense.
It does.
I'm sorry to bring it down.
No, not at all.
We add to we add to it. Isaiah started it. I add to the middle, and you just bring it on home.
Yeah.
And it's just, this is where I am, and this is why I am. To some, I might appear to be very hard, very tough, and I've had to be that way because I can only imagine the spiral that I would have gone through, addiction and all these other things. That's why, there's something out there holding me together. And that's why my family is very important to me, because family was very important to my father. Family was very important. We used to have family dinner every day. We used to sit down and have family dinner. He used to force us, and I used to complain. I was a very big mouth when I was younger and a big complainer. Sounds familiar. I still am.
Yes, it's not changed.
And And now, when he used to force us to eat dinner and force us to sit together and watch TV, and him and I used to sit down and watch a ton of Disney tapes, Lion King, the Aristocats, and all these things together. And now I look like it was purposeful, like he did those things on purpose. And I don't want to forget those things. And I don't, I guess, I don't know if it's an unhealthy thing to do or a healthy thing to do, but that is where I am with my grief. And I'm okay with feeling that way. I'm not depressed like I used to be before. I went through a deep depression and didn't know that I was going through a depression. I went through, suicidal ideation. And I came out of that triumphant. And losing a parent, especially at a young age, I don't think it's something that you can ever process. And especially if the gatekeepers around you didn't help you process that. I processed my father's death officially when I was 22 years old.
Wow.
And that's because I got up, pulled myself up by my emotional and my psychological bootstraps, and I had to mature before my time. I had to emotionally mature before my time and defend myself emotionally and psychologically for a very long time. Well, mind you, my family is wonderful, but my family is imperfect. And by the time from 10 to 22, so much damage was done, psychologically and emotionally. But thank God for, thank you, Black Jesus, for therapy. Thank you for, just being able to move forward and being forward thinking and modeling the behavior that I wish was modeled for me when I was younger. Yeah, and that's that's my emotional, that's my grief and my loss that I and when you say also, Isaiah, that you dreamt of your grandmother, every time I dream of my father, that day is going to be a good day. And I dream of him often. And we have in my dreams with my father, they are very detailed. I see his beard, I see his kufi. We sometimes go pray together. We sometimes are eating breakfast together. We sometimes are reading the Quran together. Everything is very detailed. Even the words on the Quran are detailed in my dreams with him. And every time I do that, I wake up and like I want to go back to sleep because I want to enjoy that more. But I know when I wake up that today's going to be a good day because I started my day with my father. Yeah, and that's my grief and my loss that I deal with every day. And I haven't gotten over it, Hopefully I hope that I can get over it and move on and live to be 100. And when I close my eyes and I die and I wake up again, I wish that, I hope that he's the first person that I see. Hi, everyone. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. 1, it's free. 2, there are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. 3, Anchor will distribute your podcast so that everyone can hear it, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. It is everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. So go ahead, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Um, yeah, and that's my grief and my loss that I deal with every day. And I haven't gotten over it. Hopefully, I hope that I can get over it and move on and live to be 100. And when I close my eyes and I die and I wake up again, I wish that, I hope that he's the first person that I see. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have anything else to say. Sorry.
Why? Sorry.
Just taking it in.
Yeah.
That was. I can't even put it in words. Like listening
Yeah.
to your story, just
I'm
wow.
sorry. And a lot of people, I haven't shared this with a lot of people. I think now is a good time. A lot of people, I have a stepfather, and a lot of people, I to protect myself emotionally, I have verbalized that this is my father. Because it depends on my mood. Sometimes I am incapable of sometimes processing that my daddy is not here and he has not seen me, and I look exactly like my father. And sometimes it just bothers me. Sometimes I look into the mirror and I see my father and it bothers me. And when you, Jasper, you mentioned that, when you have a nice smile, let's use the picture with your smile. That is my father's smile.
Oh, wow. That makes a lot of sense now.
Yeah.
So sometimes sometimes some days are good days and sometimes are bad, and I think that's sometimes that's the basis of my anxiety, where my anxiety comes from. So, and I have a very good relationship with my parents now, my stepdad and my mother. They're very, very good people. And I feel I have grown so much where I can tell people that my stepfather is my father, and he stepped in, and I gave him a hell of a run for his money. And he is an incredible father, and that's why I feel very comfortable calling him my father. And I haven't shared this with a lot of people because I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel safe sharing this with a lot of people. And I also wasn't emotionally or psychologically ready to share that. And I'm 36 years old now. If not now, then when?
Well, I thank you for being open enough to share your story with us. I feel
Absolutely.
honored and privileged um, to be chosen and put in this place to hear your story along with Isaiah.
Well, this is a safe space.
Absolutely. I was going to say that, like, this is, you know, this is a safe space. And I feel like safe spaces mean being able to be the full spectrum of all of the vulnerability that you may feel about anything, that you've experienced, in this world. Just the human experience and the human condition it's a lot. It's heavy, and it's not. I want to say it's not for the faint of heart, but we all do it. So I guess none of us are really faint of heart. I think if we can say we've made it through. And I think, to touch on something you said, Theo, about not necessarily getting through it or moving through it, is I take it on as, hey, like, this is just part of the fabric of my being now. Like, it's not even about getting through it, it's really growing with it. I always try to say, like, what you go through, you grow through. But
Yeah.
I think with grief, like, it just grows with you, and it just depends on where you are, depending on the day. I like, you don't I don't think you ever get over get over a loss. Not really. I don't think you're supposed to. I think it's supposed to take on its own life within you. And I think it's supposed to just affect your every being, and hopefully in a positive way most days. But some days it's just not gonna some days it's just not gonna be it. You know what I mean? Some days you're in the car and a certain song comes on and you just are crying on your way to work. Not speaking from experience or anything.
Nah.
You know, and then you get to work and it's like, oh, it's just allergies. I'm sorry.
But you know what my therapist told me years ago, which because I used to keep this all bottled in, and I used to be like a Pepsi. I love Pepsi, so I'm going to say Pepsi. I used to be like a 2-liter Pepsi bottle. You're shaking, and then you're afraid to open up the cap. That used to be me.
Oh,
because I was keeping all of that in. And my therapist, through conversation, she said, "Why don't you just give yourself the gift of grieving, of crying, of acknowledging." And I said, "You know what? Yeah, why don't I do that?" So so every time on my birthday, my family has gotten to the custom of leaving me alone. I am alone. I cry. I am vulnerable. I am, I go and I'm asking why. I'm being grateful for also the memories, and I release. And every April 7th, I do that, and I have time alone, and I meditate, and go through the emotions that I need to go through, instead of being a Pepsi bottle that's been being shaken for 10, 12, 14, 15 years. Can you imagine opening that up?
Oh my God. It's like, talk about not being able to put it back in the bottle or container.
Yeah.
Okay, be everywhere, just a mess.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like Pandora's box. Like, once you open it, you can never close it again.
No, I open it and then close it right back up and tell all the feelings, get back in there.
Like, get back in there. This is not the time. And that's on compartmentalization.
Yeah, but what it is also is because even though those things happen to us, we still had to go out into the world and function.
Yeah.
That part.
We still had to go and be present. And, the world wasn't designed. I think if I lived in a different world and my family was given, I grew up very privileged. But I think where we had privilege in terms of money and things like that, we didn't have emotional stability in abundance. We didn't have vulnerability, and it's also because my family are Hispanics, my family are Muslims, my family are minorities, so they had to present in the world a certain way in order to make ends meet and to make things happen. And I think for me as well, if I was raised in a different society where I was allowed to be angry without being ostracized and being a pariah, I would have been okay. Society didn't grant me the opportunity to be angry and to be sad and to be depressed, because then I will be labeled as a schizophrenic, or, that angry black boy is going to be a criminal. And all these other factors that played in to me having to push my emotions and my grief to the back of the room and present every day. I remember having to take the test the next day in school after my father died, and Miss Chambers, this was the teacher name, I hope she's doing well, told me that if I didn't, no, I hope, no, this is me being facetious. I hope she's not doing well.
I can't.
Because she said that if you miss this, you cannot miss the test because I'm going to fail you.
Wow.
Oh, bye,
That's
Mrs.
so
Chambers.
like,
I hope you
yeah.
fell in a well. Next.
Not
But
because at first.
but then I would see that the other kids that did not look like me, hint hint, they were going through, like, they had a bad day because they had an argument with the sister, their mom, or and where it caused them to rile up and have the same emotion as me. They were cuddled, they were taken to the guidance counselor, the teacher took her time to have conversations with them, and here I was dealing with this, that I had a lot of questions, and I was not allowed to see a guidance counselor. I was told to suck it up. And I was told to get over it. Welcome to New York.
Yeah.
You
Wow.
weren't showing any compassion.
No
So
compassion.
sometimes, and I'm still dealing with, and I was a very emotional kid, and that emotional kid had to die so that I could survive and be here today.
That's true. That's so true.
And I know that's not only my story, that's the story of a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
That you had to put your grief and your loss to the back of the room, to the bottom of your list, so that today you can be alive.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for me being able to do those things or doing those things, I would have taken my own life. I would have been addicted, or I would have been in someone's psych ward.
Oh yeah.
Because when they say black don't crack, I'm not just talking about my skin.
Okay.
I'm talking about all aspects of me.
Ooh, okay.
Mental breakdowns don't discriminate. Anybody can have one. So
And I
anybody can
think,
have one.
and I think, this is, and just to bring light to, this is incredibly important to not just to be open, as, because I feel like a running theme, especially the last 2 episodes, has been catharsis, right? And relief,
Oof.
right? But I feel like it's so important for people that look like us to have a space or spaces where you can emotionally unload, and you can really speak about, like, the depths of your soul, in a sense, and how you maintained, and how much we compartmentalize because we felt like we've had to so much, and even especially in, and I'm just gonna speak for myself in this sense. I don't want a blanket statement, but like, I've definitely felt like I've had to be less emotional in spaces with, and I think we definitely chat about this on another episode, but I've definitely felt like I've had to minimize or be less emotional in spaces with other men.
Oof.
Particularly, I've always felt like I could open up and be more emotional with my female counterparts, because it wasn't really okay to be emotional like that with the men in my life. So it was, if I had tears or I had pains or anything like that, it was always, that's why, I grew up with a lot of estrogen in my life. So I always felt like those were safe spaces with my grandmother and with my mom and things like that. But, I didn't have like, I didn't really have like these conversations with, I didn't have these conversations with my father, or with, and that's a story unto its own, but, with.
I think this is, by the way, this is going to be a 2-part.
Oh,
yeah. Oh yeah.
2 parts.
Oh yeah.
Because we're still going.
There's definitely like.
No, but what you're saying, but also what you're saying is true.
Mm-hmm.
I we have I am we have as men, I when I was a child and I was grieving or I was looking to be comforted in that way, I was told to suck it up.
Mm-hmm.
I was told to stop being a faggot.
Oh,
Mm.
I was told that is for girls. I was told I knew the word bitch ass nigga before it became trendy.
oh damn.
Wow. I forgot.
Eh, yeah, talk about toxic masculinity.
Oh.
I was saturated by it. And my father, as masculine, he was as masculine as they came. But there was such a vulnerability about my father. There was such a ease about him.
Mm-hmm.
And as I and I don't as a 36-year-old man, I need that in my life so much, and I don't have that. And my father would have been my gatekeeper. He would have kept those things away from me.
Mm-hmm.
But because he was not around, I was told, "Oh, stop crying about everything. Why are you always crying like a bitch about everything? Get over it." And so I grew up and I became conditioned to think crying equals to weakness.
Mm.
Sensitivity equals to someone you being treated like a doormat. Vulnerability is someone taking advantage of you. So I decided, I had to bury that boy. I had to kill him and bury him. And from time to time, I think about him and I wonder, what kind of person would Theo have been if he was told, "Oh, Theo, you're crying? Here's some tissue. Cry some more.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Theo, you're sad? Let's sit down. Talk to me about your sadness. Hey, Theo, here's a hug and a kiss." Even as a 36-year-old man now, I feel very uncomfortable when people hug me.
Wow. It just shows it really it really lends or puts a lens to how damaging it can be, toxic masculinity I'm referring to, and not telling young men that it's okay to show emotion. And I think it was like a double-edged sword for me a little bit, because I was allowed in my, at least in my home with my mom and my grandma, and I was allowed to cry and I was allowed to be, but then in the outside world, I was too sensitive and I was too docile. And and that helped in my friendships with women because, but in the outside world it was just kind of like, okay, well, man up, you know
What the hell does that mean,
man
man?
up, right? I mean, really, if we want to get real technical, it should be woman up, because if any being can push a child out of a small orifice, okay. That's the way
Child.
I and I will say, one of the real things to, and not to say, listen, and not to say my mother was not, because it was just my mom, as far as my parentage went, as well, in a lot of ways, like, or being around at least, um she had to be both roles in some cases, so she had to be mom and dad. And so constantly walk that line. I know we're getting a little off topic with this, but just like, she had to constantly walk that line of like, okay, so I have to be soft and feminine and motherly, but then I also have to be like an authoritarian and fatherly, and it was like a weird balance. But um it's I feel like those roles, like just kind of those roles are so it's toxic, like to placate people into these spaces, because then like you should have never had to kill that part of yourself for survival.
Oh, I murdered that motherfucker. I remember the battle.
I remember that. Like you should have never had to, in all seriousness, had to kill that part of yourself for survival in order to really blossom and to move forward.
I remember when I told my therapist that, and she was like, "You say what now?"
She's probably was like, "Wait, what? Who? Oh,
I hope I don't have a Dexter in my room." I said, "I feel emotion." In reality, I am a very emotional person. I am a very sensitive person, and I'm a very empathetic person. But I was raised in an environment and in a religion, Islam, where those things were looked down upon, and those were things that were labeled for women. Those were things that were not meant for, big, strong men and masculine, and you're going to be making babies and, So it was just like, it's unfortunate. So that's why I have nieces and nephews now, and especially my nephews. I tell them, let it go. If you're feeling sad, there shouldn't be a behavior behind it. Use your words, and if you need to cry, cry. I say to them things that were never said to me.
Right.
And I also believe the men in my space, or the men that were raising me, or the men that I was around, they themselves were taught this. And I think they themselves committed murder on the young child that was emotional.
Oh yeah, it was definitely a cycle. And listening to you, as a kid, I was very emotional. As a kid, I was very sensitive, and as I got older, I think, growing up in an abusive household, which we probably touch on another time, but I think growing up in an environment like that really like affected me as I became older, because then I became guarded, and then I became less emotional, and I didn't show emotion, and it was like not just robotic, because like people would expect me to be emotional, when tragedies come. I don't, but I would there be emotional, like, I would hold them back, like either my grandmother's funeral, my mother's mother. Like I wasn't emotional. Like I felt the tears wanting to come, but I would restrain them. I would restrain them and keep them in. Like I could say, I was raised to believe that men are supposed to be strong, and supposed to be to hold the family together, be tough, and not be vulnerable. So that was always in my head. Like I had to be strong, but I was literally like, in a way, like almost killing myself trying to be strong and not show emotion. Losing my brother because I was making myself sick and didn't realize it. Like I really could have put myself in the hospital or had a stroke because I was having a headache and chest pain. But I really could have killed myself trying to be this tough and hold all this pain in. But when you're in pain, you have to let it out. And I've learned that you have to release it, and give yourself permission to release, and let that pain out and let that pain go, because now it could physically affect you. And it's sad that raised, and you were told to that you had to kind of guard that side of you, because you should be able to be vulnerable and show your emotional side and cry, because crying is what it's natural. That's what we were giving tears for. We were giving tears to hide them when we're sad. We were giving tears to show them and let them fall.
Absolutely.
So
And that's so important. Like, just like verbalizing that part, like tears are release. Like it's not weakness, or it shouldn't be perceived that way. Tears are release. It's a release of emotion. It's supposed to, for me, if I cry, I'm like, this is like, obviously in the moment it doesn't feel great, but it's it's just like I'm letting all this weight off of me.
Oh, you feel great after you cry. Oh my God.
Yeah,
Oh
like,
yes.
right? Like, it's just like, like you can just breathe again afterwards.
That's
Yes.
the best kind of sleep I have after a good cry.
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
yes. Oh
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
But like a whole weight is lifted off, like this whole like stress and the heaviness of being, holding these tears in. Once you release them, it's like the heaviness is gone.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
It is. It is.
Man.
Heavy, heavy, heavy. Woo.
I know this
Oh,
was a very heavy episode.
it
Yes.
was. But I feel like, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I feel, I also want to say, like, thank you both for not only, like, allowing me to have that safe space to dive in and share that, my experience with you guys, but wow, like, and I also feel like I got to, like, not like we talk and we chat like a lot, but I feel like I really got to hear parts of you guys that I would have never known otherwise. It like adds a layer, you know what I mean? Like,
And
to
we're multi-layered, like you said before.
absolutely.
Yes.
It's
Emotional.
like, right? It's like it's like filling in spaces and going, wow, like, like if we start, like, it's like a slate, like when you first start, like if you start life one color, like if you start life like pink, like you end it magenta, like you
Hey,
color
oh,
in, you know what I mean? Like, it's, I don't know a better way to
no,
explain it.
no, but I too also just want to piggyback on what you said. I want to, thank you guys for sharing. You, Jasper, I know that's not an easy thing to share, and you, Isaiah, I know losing a grandparent, especially one that helped raise you to be the wonderful person that you are today, isn't easy to share. And, again, thank you for feeling, and this is what makes this a safe place. You sharing those things and feeling comfortable sharing those things, and I appreciate it.
And I concur once again. I want to thank you both for sharing your story with me, and I've been choosing this space to share it in. I'm honored to be chosen to be in a space to hear your stories and and also learn more about you guys. And listening tonight puts a lot of into perspective because now I like Isaiah said, the pieces of each one of you that I have now acquired. So now I'm learning a little bit more about you guys. So this is a
Absolutely.
beautiful moment. Beautiful.
It really is. It really is.
Oh,
Oh, my brothers.
I know. So this is where we're going to end. And until next time, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
And we out.
We out. We gotta laugh a little bit, right?
Yes, I know. Let's laugh. Let that be the
Let's
last thing we do.
laugh. Oh my God. Yes. Laughs
Yes.
ahoy. Like Chips Ahoy, but laughs ahoy.
Yes.
Later,
Laughter.
everybody.
Bye.
So yes.